So let's talk about some of the candidates trying to win the most powerful office in the world. Recent polls showed Jeb Bush struggling to break out in the 2016 race. The former Florida governor has been overshadowed by other candidates in the crowded Republican field. But supporters say do not count Bush out just yet. A comeback is still very possible. An article in the Christian Science Monitor says, quote, Bush's dream of making history may be fading, but especially in this unpredictable presidential cycle, it is not gone. Shane DeApril is the publisher of Campaigns and Elections magazine. Good morning to you on this day before Thanksgiving, Shane. Do you agree with the premise? Can Jeb Bush mount a comeback?
Well, I don't think you can count anybody out at this stage. And the main reason for that, John, is what we know about presidential cycles, particularly late in primary cycles, is that there's a great opportunity for voters to break in a completely different direction late. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it last cycle, going back to 2003, when you look at the Democratic race that year, heading into 2004, and you had John Kerry, who was at about 4% in December, and Howard Dean led with about 23%. We know how that turned out. So there's great potential for late swings. That's one of the main reasons why you can't count anybody out at this stage, even as underwhelming as Jeb Bush has been as a candidate and as a campaign, frankly.
Yes. To continue that theme, 8 years ago on the Republican side, a guy named Rudy Giuliani was the #1 contender with 28%, and the eventual nominee, John McCain, only had about 12% at this point in the election cycle. So, yeah, things can turn around.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for Jeb Bush over these next couple of months is going to be, can he actually stick around through Iowa, through New Hampshire, through South Carolina? The rationale from the folks within Bush's campaign is that Jeb Bush is the guy who is best set up organizationally, financially, for a long-haul presidential campaign on the Republican side. So can Jeb Bush get into the month of March, where you've got all sorts of states voting at the same time? It's not we're not going state by state at that point. And can his deep pockets, the ads that his super PAC is hopefully will still be able to run for his sake at that point, can that overcome this sort of state by state slog that he finds himself in now? Because Iowa is not particularly hopeful for him. And New Hampshire doesn't look that way either. So the big question for Bush is, how far can he get, and does he have the staying power to stay in until he might be able to actually make an impact with that organization and that money in the month of March?
Yeah, generally Iowa and New Hampshire are considered the states that sort of winnow the field. And if we look at the Iowa polling results of late, Jeb Bush is not exactly up there, setting the place on fire. There's Donald Trump at 25%, and you see Jeb Bush way to the right of the screen in 6th position at 4%. Even if you go to his home state of Florida in an FAU poll, Donald Trump has 36%, Marco Rubio half of that at 18%, then Carson Cruz and the former two-time governor of Florida at 9%, just about 1/4 of the support that Donald Trump has. You still say, despite those numbers, he can turn it around?
It's certainly possible. I think Jeb Bush's biggest problem is clear. He is the ultimate establishment candidate in a cycle that is rewarding anything but. You don't get more anti-establishment than Donald Trump, who's been able to sort of set the grassroots of the GOP on fire to this point. So the question for Jeb is, when you talk to people who have seen him in action in Florida as governor, as a campaigner, they paint this picture of a fierce competitor, somebody who doesn't give up, has that staying power. If he can somehow demonstrate that and find his footing as a candidate, I think there still is a chance there, but it's a long hill to climb for him.
His supporters point to the fact that, the last time he ran for office, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram. Social media just didn't exist, and that is something that Donald Trump especially has been able to harness to his advantage. He can sort of bypass the talking heads on the evening news and just say whatever he wants to say right to the people.
Yeah, it's true, and it does make a big difference, John, because in order to effectively leverage yourself as a candidate in this sort of social media age, there's got to be personality there. And one of the clear knocks on Jeb is that he doesn't really have the charisma or the personality, certainly, that his brother had on the campaign trail. He has a bit of a tougher time connecting one-on-one, and I think you're seeing that glaring in this sort of, new media age.
All right, Shane DeApril, the publisher of Campaigns and Elections magazine. keep watching it with us. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, another